Hello, Misfit Nation. This is Dave Lukas, and welcome to another episode of the Misfit Entrepreneur, where it's our job to help you unleash your inner misfit and break through to higher levels of success, wealth, and fulfillment by bringing you the best insight and information from the world's top entrepreneurs, with a specific focus on their misfit side, the specific traits, habits, and secrets that have allowed them to thrive and succeed. As a reminder, if you are new to our YouTube channel, first time with us, hit the subscribe button below. Give this video a like and comment as well. We do our best to respond to all comments as timely as possible. This week's Misfit Entrepreneur is John St. Pierre. John is a 25 plus year entrepreneur veteran who scaled 2 companies to over 50 million in global revenues. In fact, John started while still in college as a franchisee for College Pro Painters, and then he went on to co-found Legacy Global Sports, Brand Point Services, and Rhombus Group. Legacy Global Sports rapidly reached 50 plus million in global revenues, and Brand Point Services is now a 100 million plus enterprise. His role as the majority owner and chairperson of Rhombus Group is a holding company comprised of several smaller companies that's allowed him to inspire other entrepreneurs and help them achieve their goals. He's also the author of the new book, The $100 Million Journey, where he shares the 7 key principles for entrepreneurial success. But it wasn't all sunshine and lollipops, as most entrepreneur journeys aren't. In fact, John was actually fired from a company he spent over 15 years building, and then he had to start from square one. He learned a lot of lessons along the way, which partly inspired his book, and it's those lessons learned over a 25 plus year career that I'm excited for him to share with you today. So, John, are you ready to unleash your inner misfit?
I can't wait. I'm such a misfit. I can't wait to jump right in.
Well, hey, it's a pleasure to have you on. And you've got a pretty incredible story, building a company, then being kicked out of it, and then doing it again, and now several $100 million level companies. So why don't you just take 5 minutes or so and tell us, how'd you get to where you're at?
Yeah, well, certainly, as you mentioned, a lot of peaks and valleys. Every entrepreneur kind of goes through the ups and downs of failure and success and learning throughout their entrepreneurial journey. And so 25 years ago, as an entrepreneur, I started off, as you mentioned, with College Pro Painters in college. Although I was getting an accounting degree, wanted to go, test my entrepreneurial roots, and was a franchisee for College Pro for a couple of years. That evolved where I became a general manager for College Pro, where I would go hire and train college students on how to run a business right out of college, which was a lot of fun for me. And that evolved from there. And so through this entrepreneurial journey, I always want to start my own thing and build my own business. And so in 2003, I did start a couple of companies, actually. One was a project management construction company, and one of them was a sports business. And the sports business was kind of a hobby business on the side, whereas my project management company was my full-time gig. But both companies started growing at a rapid pace. And when the recession hit in 2008, construction and project management took a little bit of a dip, but people kept spending money on their kids and sports. So sports business continued to grow. And I came to an inflection point where look, I got to focus on one of these and build one of these businesses. So I selected to pick the sports business, and I went all in on the sports business and had a vision, Dave, of building that sports company to be the largest youth sports company in the world. And had a vision of, we were at around 10 million or so at the time, around the mid, 2011-ish period. And I said, I want to grow this company to 100 million in 5 years. Let's go. I got a roadmap. I got a plan. Let's go build this business. And over the course of a couple of years, grew the business to north of $50 million of revenues, and made some fatal mistakes along the way that 5 years ago around this time, so 5 years ago today, I was fired from that very company. I had spent 15 years building it, from the hobby starts to the high growth period, but ran the business off the cliff a little bit and put myself in a vulnerable position to get fired from that very company, the company that I loved and poured my heart and soul and blood, sweat, and tears into. And so picking myself back up after that experience and experiencing devastating failure, loss of identity, loss of income, loss of everything that I had there with that particular business, had to really find what my true purpose was and where I was going. And finally kind of aligned what I wanted to do in my life with what I wanted to do in business, connected those two dots together, and applied the principles and learnings I had from my massive failure back to the construction project management company, which I still had an ownership stake in, and said, let me take the case study of what I just learned here and apply it to this business. And we subsequently grew that business from a little under $5 million in revenues to north of $100 million the right way, and and applied those lessons successfully there. So
I've got a couple questions surrounding what happened with the previous company, and then I want to dig into a lot of what you're doing today. So what was it like to get fired from a company that you spent well over a decade building? Like, what was that like?
Yeah. So, if you're a misfit entrepreneur listening to this conversation and you've been in business 10 plus years, maybe 15, maybe 20, you've had your business and you've been building this thing, right? Those early years are the tough years, right? The startup years and the struggle years, and you're stressed out, you're working long hours, you're trying to build this business. Well, when you're 15 years into a business, most of your friends are in that business. Most of your relationships are in that business. Your identity's in that business. My kids, all their apparel that they had was that business, right? I had that logo tattooed on my forehead. The culture was something we had created from nothing to north of 500 employees globally in that business. And it was everything. And to have put myself in a vulnerable position to be terminated in a boardroom 15 years after growing it to north of $50 million, it took everything out of me. And for the first time in my life, and this was, 25 years or so post-graduation from college, so 25 years of entrepreneurial juices and experience and running so hard, I had to stop. My emails stopped coming in. I had nothing on my calendar anymore. I kind of lost my identity. And so I took some time off, Dave, to really self-reflect. And the problem was I had never done that before. I was just running 100 miles an hour. Let's go. I can do it. I felt invincible. I lacked vulnerability. I was kind of like, no, I got this. I know how to do this. I got this thing figured out.
Did you see it coming, or was it a shock to you? Did it just was it something that you saw coming, or was it like out of the blue?
Not until it was too late. Right. By the time I saw the light coming this way, I knew it wasn't the end of the tunnel. I knew it was a Mack truck, and I couldn't get out. I couldn't figure out a way out of the situation I had put myself in. It was still didn't make it any easier because it happened in a short period of time. Right. So we brought on some capital. We hired some people, and we raised $20 million of capital to take our business from 50 million to 100 million. And within 6 months of bringing on that capital, I was out the door.
So speak to that real quick. So what was the mistake that you made that led to this happening? Because I think this is it's a great lesson for anybody building a business, any entrepreneur out there building a business.
Yeah. Well, in the book, The $100 Million Journey, which we'll talk about, I talk about the 7 principles of entrepreneurial success. And in reality, I violated every single one of those principles, which is why I developed them as principles to apply to this other business. But, if you root it down to the root level, I didn't protect my equity. I was so consumed with growing the business as fast as I could, raising the capital to grow the business, which then diluted my equity. And with the capital that we were generating from our profitable segments of our business, I was chasing shiny objects all over the place and not reinvesting smartly. I was reinvesting carelessly. So here I am reinvesting carelessly all of our profits that we're generating. It would then generate less cash flow for our business to reinvest, and therefore we'd go to banks to get bank debt, and then we have to go to investors to delever our balance sheet, and that took my equity position down. So by the time I was fired from this company I'd co-founded, I owned less than 8% of it. I lost complete control of the business. And I was so tied to growing this business to 100 million that I lost real purpose of what I was trying to do. It would have been a lot better to grow that business a lot slower, a lot more in control, keeping my equity, reinvesting smartly, building my own capital for growth and owning more of the business. Would you rather own 8% of a $100 million business or 100% of a $10 million business, right? The concept of equity and ownership wasn't treated with enough attention.
Yeah, that's a really, really great point, though. I think, a lot of entrepreneurs out there think that in order to succeed, in order to grow, in order to get to those levels, that you have to give up all this equity. I didn't go through a situation like yours, but I learned early on the immense value of equity and guarding it like treasure. I mean, it really is the treasure in building a business. And so you just have to be like, it takes a lot. At least if I have a business, it takes a tremendous amount for me to give up any equity in it, because of the value that it really has in the long run. So that's a great point. You mentioned the book, and I want to dig in because, really the book is your story. The book, in a lot of ways, I've gone through it now, and it's your story, but it's the lessons as you've gone through this journey and everything. So you start the book. You say it's a wake-up call to entrepreneurs, right? Your whole beginning of it's like, this is a wake-up call. So what is the wake-up call? I mean, besides protect your equity, I guess, but what is the wake-up call to entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I think it's a whole bunch of things that I talk through in the 7 principles, but to your point, protecting and growing your equity is one small component of it. Mm-hmm. I think at the end of the day, entrepreneurs need to take control of their life and their business. And way too often, those two are disconnected. Way too often, we get glamorized in the media of so-and-so who just had this $1 billion exit over here or just raised $100 million over here. And we think that's what entrepreneurship should be. At the end of the day, you become an entrepreneur to have freedom and create wealth through this thing called an asset, a business asset to which you have equity in. And way too often, we start a business like we just talked about, and the first thing we do is we go get partners. Like we literally start a business. We're afraid to do it ourselves by ourselves because we lack the confidence, we lack the capital, the experience, maybe some knowledge. So what we do is we say, hey, you want to be partners with me in this business? And you start off 50% or maybe 33% or maybe even 25% of a business that's doing zero. So right off the bat, you're maybe disconnected with why you actually started a business to begin with, why you wanted to be an entrepreneur. And way too often, you see these partnerships don't actually work. And so it ends up becoming a problem down the road. So yeah, equity is one big component of it. But at the end of the day, what is your true north life plan? What are you trying to accomplish as a person? Now align those goals to how can being an entrepreneur align to these goals? And if you can align that true sense of your true north life plan with your business goals and objectives, you maybe have a little more patient ambition in what you're trying to create and achieve versus just running and gunning and thinking you're an invincible entrepreneur who's going to create this $1 billion exit. And so I think there's a lot more patience.
What's your advice on how to do that? What's your advice for like an entrepreneur on how to create that alignment? What are some steps they should take to do so?
Yeah, well, let me start right here, Dave, and I'll ask you this just to hear your opinion. How many entrepreneurs do you know have an actual life plan?
It's hit and miss because obviously we deal with a lot of high performers on this show. So some do, right? Yeah. Some have it all kind of mapped out and everything. Others, don't. And I think as a majority of people, if we look at kind of the majority, I guess we're looking at this shows we're talking about the 90-10, the 10%, right? Maybe. Yeah. But the 90 don't for the most part. And most people don't get what they want because they don't know what they want because they never spend time deciding what they want, right? And so that's where, that's why people are kind of in limbo a lot. Yeah. And a lot of entrepreneurs are like that too. So.
And that was 100% my situation. I was a maverick entrepreneur. Like I could create businesses, I could sell businesses, I could grow businesses to north of $50 million, but I didn't have a life plan for myself. All I knew is I wanted to achieve success. So I was just running, right? And so creating my true north life plan, knowing what I wanted to do 30 years from now, what I would need to do in 10 years to get there, and 5 years to get there, and 3 years to get there, and having patience. Like one of the big words, like the book is called The $100 Million Journey, but it should have been called Patient Ambition. That's one of the working titles I had for it. Do you have ambition, but do you have the patience to build something that's strong, has a strong foundation, that's sustainable, that you can run for a long period of time, that you can grow and take care of and foster and grow? Do you have that patience? A lot of entrepreneurs, unfortunately, don't, just like I did.
Right. Yeah. So I think that is the wake-up call. Like it's we say this a lot, and it is a resonating thing. It's the long game. And it's hard in our world that we live in because we're conditioned for the instantness of society, the instant of everything. Right. I often joke, if we stop the microwave with 3 seconds, we can't even wait 3 seconds anymore for the microwave. Right. That's the world we live in. But entrepreneurship and true success in entrepreneurship isn't that. You hear the one story and you think that, is it. And that's not. I mean, the best businesses, many of them, the people end up being praised in public for what they've done in private for 20 years. And so it is important to have that perspective of the long game, because otherwise you'll burn yourself out, or you'll make too many mistakes trying to get to that level so fast that you can't keep up with it, or the business dies on itself because of the fact that, I've been there. I've been there building a business too fast where, and I think you and I, when we first spoke, talked about this too. I built a business too fast to where we were selling and growing 300, 400, 500% a year, but we weren't collecting the cash fast enough, so we weren't able to pay the bills, and we almost went out of business, right? Like, growth sucks cash. And like I hope that somebody can learn from that, like from us having a conversation about this, not having to go through it, because going through it is horrible. I remember having to empty my bank account to keep the business going for a month and figure things out. And so there's a difference between sales and cash flow. Right. And that sort of thing. And that's part of playing the long game right. Like you said, you could have slowed down and accomplished what you wanted to do, and you wouldn't have probably had any of your troubles. And I think that's a key thing for entrepreneurs to understand.
Yeah. Principle 1 in my book is protect and grow your equity, which we've talked about. But principle 2, Dave, is build your own capital. If there's one secret, if there's one wake up that entrepreneurs need to have, you experienced it and I experienced it, is you need to build your own capital. Okay, what does that mean, John? That means you need to build your own net operating cash flow. And there are 0 entrepreneurs that I've asked, do you know how fast your company can afford to grow? Do you know how much your company can afford to grow from the perspective of how much cash your business is generating and how much you can grow? Entrepreneurs have no clue. And entrepreneurs listening to this have no idea what their self-financeable growth rate is, because I didn't. Right. And I'm sure you did it in that situation, right? So what we do our strategic planning. We're like, let's grow 50% this year. Well, what if your company can only afford to grow 10% based on the cash that it's generating? Where's the other 40% going to come from? It's going to come from bank debt. It's going to come from investors. It's going to come from other areas. It's going to dilute principle 1, your equity. You got to protect your equity. So knowing how fast your company can afford to grow. Or you're going to
grow too fast and collapse on yourself, which is almost what happens.
Growth kills if you don't plan it out properly. And so knowing how fast your company can afford to grow and growing systematically according to how fast your numbers are telling you can grow is growing your business under control. And a lot of entrepreneurs really, really miss that.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the best lessons that any entrepreneur can learn is how to, because it is a constant balancing act, especially if you are protecting your equity and you're funding out of cash flow. It is a constant balancing act, because as you grow, if you're growing well, you're going to need people here and this here, and so you've got to start to like, well, how much money do we have, right? What's our run rate look like so that we can strategically hire that and pay that out, but not break the bank and go negative. Like, it is a constant balancing act, but that's the thing with entrepreneurship, though. The bigger the problems that you can solve, the bigger the business that you can have. So it's not something you shy away from. It's something that you should welcome, because it means you're on the right path. But it's definitely an opportunity when it arises. But that growth phase where you see that a lot. It's a tough phase. Things break. People have challenges. Your team gets overstretched. Like, all of that happens during that type of phase. In fact, it kind of goes to my next question, because you and I liked how you did this in the book. You talked about this going from like this lifestyle to the messy middle, I think is what you called it, right? And talking about how your goal is kind of helping business owners kind of grow beyond the lifestyle without getting stuck in the messy middle. Talk a little bit about that, because I think that's kind of where we're at. We're talking about the messy middle.
Yeah, a lot of entrepreneurs are right in the in the lifestyle phase of their business, right? So a lot of entrepreneurs are right in the lifestyle phase where they've gotten through the startup years, they've gotten through the struggle years, they have a nice business, they're paying themselves well, they got a good team, but now they got to make a decision. If they want to go from a lifestyle-sized business to a high-performance business where they really can create true wealth and equity for themselves and move themselves above the business a little bit, be more strategic. you go through this phase called the messy middle. And it's the most dangerous phase of all, because in order for you to move from lifestyle to high performance, to your point, you got to invest. You got to go hire some key executives maybe onto your team. You got to invest more in sales and marketing. Maybe you have to buy some more equipment, whatever it may be in your business. That's all risk, because what if it doesn't work? And what if it doesn't work? You got to bring investors in. You got to get a bank loan. You probably have a PG with your bank for your line of credit. There's a whole bunch of different risks that start coming in. I call that the treacherous terrain of the messy middle, where you take one step forward, two steps back, and then you start growing your business a little bit bigger. And as you know, as an entrepreneur, right, just when you pop the champagne and thinks everything's going right, you get punched in the gut the other way because something else doesn't go right. That's entrepreneurship.
Always say you got to have a healthy paranoia with your business, especially when things are going well.
Love healthy paranoia. Absolutely. You got to have a healthy dose of paranoia along the way, but it's a dangerous area. You might as well just stay in the lifestyle phase and be comfortable. But that's not what entrepreneurs want to do. They aspire to greatness. They aspire to be a high achiever, to build a high performance business where they can create true wealth. And that's the area that I really focus on with entrepreneurs, Dave, is that messy middle. How do you build the business of your dreams without falling off the cliff?
All right, so we were talking about that messy middle and navigating that and navigating that transition from lifestyle business and to the messy and beyond the messy middle, right, to a high performing business. So take us through, like, what are the do's and don'ts through those stages to make it?
Yeah. All right. So let me walk through the 7 principles with you, Dave, and then you dive in wherever you want, right? Because you know what principle 1 is: protect and grow your equity. You know what principle 2 is: build your own capital for growth. Principle 3 ties to what we just talked about when you try and move from lifestyle to high performance, is you have to reinvest smartly. You have to be really, really careful with every dollar you reinvest. Does every dollar you reinvest increase your capital to grow or not? Or do you spray and pray and shiny object syndrome problems and that you go that way? So 3 is reinvest smartly. 4 is you have to build a culture of intrapreneurship. You got to build an entrepreneurial mindset with your team where everybody's treating the business as if it was their own and treating with the respect, love, and care that they would if it was their own business. So you create a culture of intrapreneurship. Principle 5 is the healthy dose of paranoia chapter. It's principle 5 is about protecting the house. How do you protect what you're building as you're growing it? Because your vulnerabilities, will continue to get larger and larger and larger as you grow this business. You'll have more exposure. How do you protect the house? Principle 6 is, how do you access owners' liquidity? It takes cash to grow. If you don't have the oxygen to grow, you can't grow. But as you grow, you start making money. As you start making money, you get taxed. As you start getting taxed, more money is going to the IRS. When do you finally pay yourself? How can you access the liquidity you're creating without selling your equity? How do you do that? There's ways to do that I talk about in Access Owners Liquidity, Principle 6. And Principle 7 is moving from CEO to chairperson. When can you remove yourself from being the chief cook and bottle washer, being involved in all aspects of your business, where you've built up a team of entrepreneurs and you've got all the systems in place, where you can move to that level 7 type of leader where you're presiding over the business at a more strategic level versus being the operating executive?
So let's unpack, let's go through the 7 again. Okay.
Yep.
And what and this is tough, admittedly, but top 2 or 3 actions or things that people or that entrepreneurs need to make sure they do under each one of those principles to be successful. So the first one's probably pretty easy. Protect your equity ferociously, and only give it up when it is absolutely like a 1 + 1 = 5 scenario. But I'll let you go. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So protect and grow your equity. Principle 1, never give it away loosely, like you just talked about. Way too many entrepreneurs always resort to that. They want to hire an A player, like, oh, maybe I'll give them 10% of the business. No. Don't give it. You're not giving anybody a percentage of your business, right? So protect it. If you do have an opportunity where you do need capital, realize that there's other ways to get capital than giving away equity. There's ways to get, a debt instrument, get a loan. There's a whole bunch of other ways to do it. And if you have key people coming into your team that you want to reward for value, there's something I talk a lot about in the book called phantom equity. How can you bring on an A player into your business and not give them real equity in the business, but say, look, our business is worth $1 million today. You help us grow the business from $1 million to 10. There's $9 million of value there. I'll pay you out a nice bonus incentive vested over a 5-year period to help me grow this thing. So it's kind of a phantom equity instrument, but they're non-voting. You don't have to change your operating agreement. You don't have to worry about another voting person hanging around. It's easier to separate from. There's ways like that. So that's what I talk about in protecting your equity. But you're right. There may be an opportunity at some point for you to bring on an investor or partner to your business to help you grow further. But you really, really, really need to scrutinize that decision.
Yeah. All right. So principle number 2.
Okay. Build your own capital. This is pretty simple on this one. Do you know your net operating cash flow? Everybody knows their profit and loss. They know what their profit and loss statement is. They know what their balance sheet is. Do they know how much net operating cash they generated last year? And
define that for the audience. Define net operating cash flow for the audience so that they have the context of how you're going to speak to it.
Absolutely. So net operating cash flow is ultimately, at the end of the day, pretty simply, how much cash went in versus cash went out from your particular business. And there's a lot of detail in there, right? There's differences in accounts receivable, there's difference in APs, there's difference in liabilities. So there's a formula for that. And I have a workbook. You can fill it out and calculate. But most CEOs or CFOs don't know how to calculate net operating cash flow. They focus on the cash flow statement or the balance sheet or the P&L. But the story I like to tell on this one, Dave, is Vern Harnish and Alan Milts wrote a book called Scaling Up. And there's a cash section of Scaling Up, right? I interviewed Alan Milts. He said, John, I've asked 3,000 CEOs if they can actually tell me what their net operating cash flow is, and none of them can. And I know I couldn't. I just knew what my profit was and what my balance sheet was. But your net operating cash flow is what defines how fast your company can afford to grow. So a Harvard Business article, which was called How Fast Can Your Company Afford to Grow, was written, and they gave you a formula for your self-financeable growth rate. Do you know your self-financeable growth rate? And if your growth rate says you can grow 5% a year, but your business plan says you can grow 20% a year, you got a 15% gap. What is your capital strategy? And that's another question. How many businesses have a 3-year capital strategy? 0. Most entrepreneurs don't know how to develop a capital strategy, right? They just keep going. So know your net operating cash flow, know your self-financeable growth rate, and develop a capital strategy so you don't have to go hat in hand to financiers or banks. That's principle 2.
That's perfect. Principle number 3 then.
Principle 3, reinvest smartly. So double down on your winners. A lot of entrepreneurs have a winning product or service. They don't go deep enough in it. They decide, let's go into verticals. Let's go into other services and products before really becoming an expert in the domain that they're in. The riches are in the niche that you're in. Go deep, right? Invest in sales and marketing and perfect your sales and marketing metrics in that particular vertical to increase your net operating cash flow before you go anywhere else. So this whole, shiny object syndrome that we have to avoid as entrepreneurs, that's what happens. We get success. We have some level of success in pocket A, and we decide, let's go do pocket B, C, D, E, and F, right? No, focus down on the first one. 2 is really know your numbers. Know where you can improve to further increase your net operating cash flow. And 3 is basically avoid any investment or shiny object that's going to reduce your net operating cash flow ultimately.
No, that's great.
So there's a lot more on that one. Those are 3 big ones.
That to me, all of this, anybody listening, go back, this section of the interview, go back and listen to it several times. By the time we're done, it's going to give you everything you need. But stay in your lane. Build out that niche. You can, there's so much there. It's so true. And it's amazing how it's that instantness society. It's the need to move on to something else because, that's what society is. What's the next post on the feed, right? It's like the same thing. So don't fall for that trap. All right. So principle number 4.
Yeah. Build a culture of intrapreneurship, right? So this one has to start with knowing what the core values are of your core values and the core values of the organization, and doing behavioral-based interviewing to hire people that fit your core values and the culture of your business, not just hiring because they were really good somewhere else in that particular role, or they're a really good salesperson. Let's just bring them on, but they're not a cultural fit. So really hire for your core values of what you're trying to do, and make sure that the core values of your business incorporate something around entrepreneurship or intrapreneurship and providing people value for them coming to work for you. And one thing I talk a lot about, Dave, is as an entrepreneur, we always look to hire someone and make a return on that person. In other words, if I'm hiring you and I'm paying you $50,000 a year to come work for me, I'm hoping that you're going to generate my company $150,000 or $200,000 of value, right? But when do we flip the switch? When do we say, Dave, for you coming to work for me, I'm going to provide you value. I'm going to provide you a return on investment for you coming to invest your time with me, right? And so beyond behavioral-based interviewing, I talk a lot about situational leadership. Do you know how to lead people in a situational manner? Because not everybody wants to be micromanaged, and everybody just wants to be told to delegate and go do that. So there's ways to manage people in a way that fulfills them. I talk a lot about mentorship. How do you move from being a manager to a leader to a mentor? All three of those are three different things. How do you move along that spectrum to really mentor the people that you work with? And the third thing I talk a lot about is to create that culture of entrepreneurship is take your top key entrepreneurs in the business, those that you someday may run your business 10, 15 years from now, and invest in them by providing them the opportunity to participate in the growth of the value of the business so they feel like an owner. They can chomp at the bit of saying, as this company grows in value, I'm also participating in that from a perspective of phantom equity, to which I talk a lot about.
Yeah, that's a great point. The phantom equity thing is something that not a lot of people think about when they think of equity, but it is a great thing for both you and your employees to have at your disposal to show them what can happen for them if they dedicate the time and the effort and everything. All right, principle number 5.
Yeah, protect the house. I love what you said, healthy paranoia. I won't even use that one, although I talk a lot about it. That's a really good one that you mentioned. That's one that I hold near and dear. But who are your advisors? Who are the protectors that are protecting you from all these faulty decisions you may make as an entrepreneur, right? You have to surround yourself with a board of advisors. And I know when I was growing my business, Dave, I was running and gunning. I didn't need help. I got this. I know how this business thing is figured out. I got this. I didn't need any help, right? Well, when I had my wake up moment, my big failure, what I did subsequently is I said, you know what? No. I'm not making any major decisions unless our top level CPAs involved, the wealth advisors involved, my corporate attorneys involved, my insurance person's involved. Now I make unanimous decisions with our team, right? If we have a major decision, we do not make a decision in our company that's a one-door decision, one we can't reverse, unless all of our advisors are checking up on the box. Yep, we all agree this is a good decision. We literally get them all together on video conference calls. Go, here's a big decision we're making. Let's go through all the pros and cons. We get everybody around. Like, who do you have surrounding you? Do you have a right business coach? There's another component, right? Who's coaching you? Do you have a coach? Everybody needs a coach. Tom Brady probably had 10 coaches at his prime, right? Who do you have coaching you? So that's a big thing.
Is there a caveat to that, though, that like people can overdo it in that area? Because I've seen entrepreneurs that like go out and they think they have to have, 15 different coaches and all these like outside things because other people do it and they're just bogged down by it all.
Yeah, certainly. At the end of the day, you need to do, not think to do. You need to be having your time to actually go run your business. I was more illustrating the point that, when I was growing the first 25 years of my entrepreneurship career, if you asked me who was coaching me, I was like, I don't need a coach. Like, I got this, right? And that flair of, I got this all figured out piece was very costly to me. And so, surrounding yourself with the right people is very key. Too many people, not good. Nobody, not good. You got to just have the right mix of the people around you.
It's like the three bears.
And another piece I'd say to protect the house is, do you perform vulnerability assessments on your business? There's a vulnerability assessment checklist I have in my workbook that are like, hey, just go ask yourself these questions. I mean, you'd be surprised. I'm sure you already know this. Like, how many entrepreneurs don't have, an up-to-date operating agreement, let alone a buy-sell agreement, let alone proper HR policies for onboarding employees. And, the way I like to look at it as an entrepreneur is if there's 100 holes in the boat and you plug 99 of them, guess where the water's going to come through?
The one hole, right? You're right.
And it's going to burst through and smack you. And you could do principles 1 through 5 really, really, really well, right? Or 1 through 4, really, really well. And principle 5 can come and just knock you all the way back down.
And where that comes into play a lot is if you ever get to a point, I always say, you build your business like you're going to run it, or you run your business like you're going to own it forever, but you build it so that it could be sold. And if you ever go through a sales process, if you have any skeletons, that's where they're going to get exposed. So it's best to address them now, and the things that you don't want to deal with, shore those up, fix those things, clean, repair those holes in the boat, as best as possible. Because if you ever get to that point, it's exciting, but those will get found and you will get exposed at that point. So,
yeah. And a lot of times too, Dave, what I talk about in this chapter too is what about customer credit risk? Right? Are you giving too much credit away to customers? I had wire fraud happen in our company because we didn't have enough financial controls. It cost us $250,000 of wire fraud because we didn't have the right proper controls and finance. There's so many different areas that you can get exposed. It's so dangerous.
No, great. So principle number 6.
Access owner's liquidity. This should be the one that's the most fun to talk about because it takes cash to grow. We talked about that. So if it takes cash to grow, and you're continually reinvesting in your business, and if you make money, 40% of that's going to the government, how do you access your liquidity? How can you actually pay yourself along this journey and reward yourself as you're growing, as opposed to just waiting till the end? And so there's a lot of ways to move your wealth from your business's balance sheet to your personal balance sheet in tax efficient manners that both help you, the owner, help the employees of the business, and help the business itself from retaining its cash flow. So a couple of principles I talk about in this chapter are things I had never heard about. And they're quite honestly, Dave, things you shouldn't even be looking at unless you're making $1 million or more in net operating cash flow, but they exist. First off is a 401k cash balance profit sharing program, right? So as an owner, if you provide a 401k profit cash balance program, which basically means you're doing profit sharing with your employees, you guarantee them 3% in their 401k, whether they participate or not. It's a safe harbor type of program. You as an owner can put up to 10 times the maximum allowance into your 401k on an annual basis, which is tax deductible to the business, right? So if it's $23,000 a year, $23,500, I think it is in 2023, into your 401k is the max, you could put $230,000 into your 401k, tax deductible to the business. It's a smart way to put money into your own retirement versus doing a distribution and paying taxes on it. And the business loses the cash, but then your employees also benefit. So they're happy with the profit sharing program as well. So that's one example. A second example is a captive insurance program where you can provide your business with more protection. So go back to principle 5, protect the house. You can have a captive insurance program that provides you with extraordinary coverages that your commercial liability insurance policy does not cover, but you own the insurance company. So you're basically, have a tax deduction from your business that's paying another business that you own that's taxed at a different tax rate that provides you with these extraordinary coverages that we've had to actually deploy. We've had a couple of situations where we've had coverages where our commercial insurance didn't cover, but our captive company did. And you're in a pool with hundreds of other companies that further protects the business. So those are a couple of examples. There's a lot more. But how do you access the owner's liquidity you're building in your business and not having to wait until the end where you have to sell it in order to materialize your income?
Yeah, great points again. And there's a lot of these different vehicles out there too, as well. There's other things that, I've seen businesses take advantage of if you want to keep it, like ESOPs and stuff like that you can do, which is a whole nother animal. Yes. So principle number 7.
Yeah. And so principle 7 is really, when do you move from CEO to chairperson? You may not be the best person to run your business, quite frankly. And that's one of the things that I learned, right? An intrapreneur that I had hired 15 years prior is now the CEO of our business. And he was more apt at running that business than I was. And so, a lot of times we start the business and we think that, this business can't run without us. But did you start a business to become a business operator or to become a business owner? Like,
that should be the ultimate goal, though. If you build an asset that can scale indefinitely without you, now you've built the ultimate goal. So, sorry, I know you're probably going there, but I had to say it.
No, you said it perfectly. That's exactly it. Way too many times we get caught in this trap that we have to be the doer. We have to run. We have to operate this business. We have to be the chief executive. Everybody needs to look up at me. I'm the president of the business. But when you remove yourself from that and you put a competent team in place to run your business, guess what happens? You move to the strategic level. All these years, all your advisors are saying, hey, John, you need to work on the business, not in the business. You're like, how am I going to do that? Like, I'm working 80 hours a week, right? I don't have time to work on the business. Now you can work 80 hours a week on the business, literally strategically looking at the business, the foresight of what's going on, how to reinvest in the company smartly, do all these things. And by the way, on top of that, maybe have more freedom to do some of the things you didn't do earlier in the years, in the startup years, right? Spend more time with your family, travel a little bit more, provide more service to the community, whatever it may be that drives you and your passion. Maybe even invest in other business assets that you want to grow and build. But if you move from CEO to chairperson, you kind of get away, you kind of remove the lid from your business and show the team within it that there's opportunity to grow and run this business themselves.
No, great points all around. That's a masterclass, just going through those 7 principles for anybody watching, listening. Go back through that and then think through each one for your business or where you're at, what you can take from that to apply and start to work on. Because this is not something that it's not one and done in any of these things. It's constant work in progress across it. And each stage you get to has different challenges and new things that you've got to learn and figure out as you continue to do it. So applying these 7 principles isn't just a one-time thing. It's a continuous thing where you'll loop back through it and all that. I have to ask, and I think I might know the answer, but I'm just curious, out of all these principles, which one do you believe is the most important one and why?
Dave, you kind of led me on there. I'm curious as to what you think it is. I already have my answer, but what do you think it is?
So, I mean, it's tough because protecting your equity is a critical thing for the future. And the future can be unknown, but protecting that equity is so critical if you're going to do phantom cash flow and different things that you want to do or phantom equity for potential hires and everything else. It allows you a lot of that future freedom. But I also, at the same time, think if you can't, cash is the lifeblood of a business. So if you don't have enough cash to run the business coming in the bank, you're sunk anyway. So it doesn't matter. So they kind of are two sides of a coin, but I think the cash flow actually comes before the equity in a way. So
yeah, I literally write it in the book, so I can't lie here. If there's one principle to master, it's build your own capital. Build your own net operating cash flow and continue to grow the level of net operating cash flow you can make will help grow your self-financeable growth rate. And even if you make an investment mistake, let's say you reinvest poorly, you can always retract and fix that if your business can generate enough net operating cash flow. Because if you generate enough net operating cash flow, you never need to give any equity away. You never need to bring investors into your business. Exactly. And you can grow at the pace you want to grow. So absolutely, for me, it's build your own capital and learn how to do that.
Well, how about that? Great minds think alike. Now circling back around, I've got just a couple more questions before we get to your Misfit 3. So to circle back around to the beginning where we started this. All right, so we've got a lifestyle business owner that's looking to get through the messy middle to the high performing. So now that we've gone through the 7 principles, your best thoughts on how to navigate through that messy middle while applying these, but any additional thoughts to get to really that high performing business?
Yeah. So prior to the 7 principles in the book, I talk about 2 different components that are connected. And we talked about them a little bit earlier as well. You need to know your true north life plan. You need to know exactly what you're trying to accomplish. And then you need to develop a strategic business plan that ties to your true north life plan of where you ultimately want to go. What is the BHAG of this business, right? What's the big, hairy, audacious goal of this business? What's your 10-year outlook as a vision? What's your vision for this thing? What's your mission for this business? What's your big, hairy, audacious goal? And then what's the 3-year plan that you need to get to that puts you on track for the 10-year goal? What's the 1-year plan you need to put in place for this current year? And what's the 5 quarterly actions you need to take every 90 days through this year to achieve your 1 year, to achieve your 3 year, to be on track for your 10. If you don't have that strategic business plan laid out for you on ultimately where you're going, any path will do. What are you trying to create and where are you trying to go? And it really starts there because that discipline of having that strategic business plan tied to your life plan and tied to where you want to grow the business should keep you on the straight and narrow. If you refine it every year, you cascade it through the organization, everybody knows what you're doing. The time you come in and say to the team, hey, I want to do something that's different than what's in this plan, and they all raise their hand and go, hey, wait, John, you said this is the plan. We should stick to this, and you're held accountable to sticking to that plan. It avoids you going off the rails. It avoids you trying to chase shiny objects and running all over the place. So that key is critical in addition to the 7 principles to achieve success.
No, I love it, and simple is better. I mean, is what you're saying. Don't chase the shiny objects. Stick to the plan. Stay in the lane. Right. Be good at that 10%, as we talked about earlier,
Yeah.
of the 90%, because that's going to generate 90% of the results. I guess the last question before we get to your Misfit 3: if you had to do it all over again, what's the number one thing that you would either do differently or would have taught yourself early on that you feel would have maybe made you a lot more successful than even now?
That definitely would have been to have more confidence. And it relates back to equity, right? When I had never started a company owning 100% of it, I'd always want to bring partners with me. And the question is, well, why? Well, because I love being part of a team. I was a sports guy, so that's kind of cool. But ultimately, if you root it down to it, I didn't have the confidence. I didn't have the confidence as an entrepreneur that I could actually do it. Call it imposter syndrome, call it whatever you want. And I would have more confidence when I'm starting out to say, you know what? No, I can do it. I can surround myself with the right coaches, the right people, the right education, like your podcast or other areas where I can learn what I need to do without just giving equity out to start off the business. And then ultimately years later be fighting over it with partners that I got into partnership with a little too loosely, a little too quickly. And I didn't really have to. And that would be something I'd say to younger entrepreneurs or people just starting out is, have that confidence. Go learn. It's going to take time. You're going to have bumps and bruises, but guess what? You'll have those bumps and bruises if you have partners or not. It doesn't make a difference. So go have that confidence to go create.
Okay, it's time for John's Misfit 3. These are the 3 things that he wants you to take. You can put your life, your business, make a difference for yourself starting today. And the way that I always frame this to every guest that comes on the show is I say, hey, look, if you're going to leave this earth tomorrow and you can only provide the 3 most important pieces of wisdom to the generations that come after you to help them live their best life, what would those 3 things be? So, John, what are your Misfit 3?
All right, number 1, you need to have a 30-year True North life plan. You need to know what you want to achieve in 30 years from today in all the different segments of your life and overall, like in health, relationships, financial, career, interests, whatever it may be. What do you envision your life to be? And have that as something that's right in front of you at all times so that you're always working towards it. You're doing today, right now, what you should be doing that will guide you towards that 30-year True North life plan. So I think that's number 1 for me. Number 2, have patient ambition. I mentioned earlier that I almost called my book Patient Ambition, right? I really believe that those 2 words that are almost contradictory to each other also work very, very well together. It's a journey. This whole life is a process. It's a journey. Enjoy the journey. Don't be in such a rush. To your point earlier on instant gratification, we're always looking to get things right now, right? The 3-second microwave instead of the 4-second microwave, right? The 8-minute abs instead of the 10-minute abs, whatever it may be. Slow down. Have patient ambition and grow something that's going to be sustainable and durable long term, but have patient ambition. And number 3 was one that really didn't connect with me, although I had heard it many, many, many times. I'm sure many of your listeners have heard this many times before. There's a power in training your subconscious mind through visualization and affirmation. You are what you say you are. 95% of our daily actions are subconscious. It's pre-programmed. We're already going to be doing it because it's already pre-programmed in what we do and how we think. How do you train your subconscious mind? You do that through visualization, affirmation. I now do that every single day for 12 minutes. And it really trains my autopilot on how I want to be and what I want to do. And it's something I'd heard many, many times before. And I was like, I don't buy into that affirmation, reading myself stuff. I don't need any of that stuff. But I'll tell you what, it makes a big difference. Know who you want to be and make sure that you're having that power to retrain your mind on who that is.
John, it's an excellent Misfit 3, especially that last one. And that's a topic that I love to get into on this show. We could spend a whole nother hour on that, but very, very true. If people do want to learn more about you, where should they go?
Yeah, Dave, I would say number 1, go to my website, 100mjourney.com. So 100M as in million, journey.com. And even if you don't read the book or like reading, one of the tools I have for everybody is the $100 Million Journey Workbook. And it's actually a workbook that walks through the 7 principles with templates where you fill in the blanks, and it'll tell you what your net operating cash flow is. It'll tell you what your self-financeable growth rate is. A workbook for you to use with you and your team to really walk through these 7 principles, almost like a checklist manner, and make sure you have all the bases covered. And where you don't, some tools and resources to help you overcome them. So really recommend people to go to 100mjourney.com.
Excellent. We'll link to that in the show notes, the best show notes in the business for reasons I will talk about more in a second. But first, for those of you that are new to the Misfit Entrepreneur, it's your first episode with us. It's such an honor to have you with us. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And I hope you become a regular listener, regular subscriber. For all of you that are with us week in and week out, I cannot thank you enough for your support of the show. You are what makes this go in almost 100 countries every single week. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And make sure and go out and check out the show notes for this episode. They are the best in the business. Why? Because I do them myself. It actually is part of my personal growth routine. I set aside time each and every week where I go back to these episodes and I take my best pieces of wisdom, tips, insights, actionable items from great guests like John, and I share them with you. So go out and check those out. And then go out and give this episode a rating and review. Like and comment on it. Help share John's message, because we all know, and I say this in every episode, one great episode can change someone's life. Maybe something that John shared today was that missing link you were looking for to get to your next level. So share this with others. And again, John, thank you so much for coming on, sharing all your wisdom and insight today.
Love it, Dave. Thank you very much.